Dhaka became two communities of Armenians, Greeks, and Jews. The British established several schools, colleges, and a university in what is now Bangladesh. Syed Ahmed Khan and Ram Mohan Roy promoted modern and liberal education in the subcontinent, inspiring the Aligarh movement and the Bengal Renaissance. During the late 19th century, novelists, social reformers, and feminists emerged from Muslim Bengali society. Electricity and municipal water systems were introduced in the 1890s. Cinemas opened in many towns during the early 20th century. East Bengal's plantation economy was important to the British Empire, particularly its jute and tea. The British established tax-free river ports, such as the port of Narayanganj, and large seaports like the port of Chittagong. Bengal had the highest gross domestic product in British India, with the summer capital of Shillong boasting the highest per capita income in the subcontinent. Bengal was one of the first regions in Asia to have a railway, which began operating in 1862. The main railway companies in the region were the Eastern Bengal Railway and Assam Bengal Railway. Railways competed with waterborne transport to become one of the main means of transport. Supported by the Muslim aristocracy, the British government created the province of Eastern Bengal and Assam in 1905. The new province received increased investment in education, transport, and industry. However, the first partition of Bengal created an uproar in Calcutta and the Indian National Congress. In response to growing Hindu nationalism, the All India Muslim League was formed in Dhaka in 1906. The British government reorganized the provinces in 1912, reuniting East and West Bengal and making Assam a second province. The Raj was slow to allow self-rule in the colonial subcontinent. It established the Bengal Legislative Council in 1862, and the council's native Bengali representation increased during the early 20th century. The Bengal Provincial Muslim League was formed in 1913 to advocate civil rights for Bengali Muslims. During the 1920s, the League was divided into factions supporting the Khilafat movement and favoring cooperation with the British to achieve self-rule. Segments of the Bengali elite supported Mustafa Kemal Atatürk's secularist forces. In 1929, the All Bengal Tenants Association was formed in the Bengal Legislative Council to counter the influence of the Hindu landed gentry, and the Indian independence and Pakistan movements strengthened during the early 20th century. After the Morlamintu reforms and the diarchy era in the legislatures of British India, the British government promised limited provincial autonomy in 1935. The Bengal Legislative Assembly, British India's largest legislature, was established in 1937. British Burma was also separated from British India in 1937. Sir Khwaja Salimullah oversaw the creation of the All India Muslim League in Dhaka in 1906. Although it won most seats in 1937, the Bengal Congress boycotted the legislature. A.K. Fazlul Haq of the Krishak Praja Party was elected as the first Prime Minister of Bengal. In 1940 Haq supported the Lahore Resolution, which envisaged independent states in the subcontinent's northwestern and eastern Muslim majority regions. Haq was succeeded by Khwaja Nazimuddin, who grappled with the effects of the Burma Campaign, the Bengal famine of 1943 which claimed the lives of millions of people, and the Quit India movement. During World War II, Bengal faced a possible Japanese invasion from Burma. Chittagong was bombed by the Japanese Air Force in April and May 1942. Allied forces were stationed across eastern Bengal during the war. In 1946, the Bengal Provincial Muslim League won the provincial election with the largest Muslim League mandate in British India. H.S. Sarawadi, who made a final futile effort for a united Bengal in 1946, was the last Premier of Bengal. Partition of Bengal, 1947. Main article, Partition of Bengal, 1947. On the 3rd of June, 1947, the Mountbatten Plan outlined the partition of British India. On the 6th of July, the Sylhet region of Assam voted in a referendum to join East Bengal. Cyril Radcliffe was tasked with drawing the borders of Pakistan and India, and the Radcliffe Line established the boundaries of present-day Bangladesh. The Radcliffe Line awarded 2/3 of Bengal as the eastern wing of Pakistan, but the medieval and early modern Bengali capitals of Gaur, Panjshir and Murshidabad fell on the Indian side close to the border with Pakistan. Union with Pakistan. Main articles, East Bengal and East Pakistan. The Dominion of Pakistan was created on the 14th of August, 1947. East Bengal, with Dhaka as its capital, was the most populous province of the 1947 Pakistani Federation, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who promised freedom of religion and secular democracy in the new state. Khawaja Nazimuddin was East Bengal's first chief minister, with Frederick Chalmers born its governor. The All-Pakistan Awami Muslim League was formed in 1949. In 1950, the East Bengal Legislative Assembly enacted land reform, abolishing the permanent settlement and the zamindari system. The 1952 Bengali language movement was the first sign of friction between the country's geographically separated wings. The Awami Muslim League was renamed the more secular Awami League in 1953. The first Constituent Assembly was dissolved in 1954. The United Front coalition swept aside the Muslim League in a landslide victory in the 1954 East Bengali legislative election. The following year, East Bengal was renamed East Pakistan as part of the One Unit program, and the province became a vital part of the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. Pakistan adopted a new constitution in 1956. The Pakistan Army imposed military rule in 1958, and Ayub Khan was the country's strong man for 11 years. Political repression increased after the coup. Khan introduced a new constitution in 1962, replacing Pakistan's parliamentary system with a presidential and gubernatorial system, based on electoral college selection, known as basic democracy. In 1962, Dhaka became the seat of the National Assembly of Pakistan, a move seen as appeasing increased Bengali nationalism. The Pakistani government built the controversial Kaptai Dam, displacing the Chakma people from their indigenous homeland in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. The Indo-Pakistani War of 1965 blocked cross-border transport links with neighboring India in what is described as a second partition. In 1966, Awami League leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman announced a six-point movement for a federal parliamentary democracy. According to senior World Bank officials, the Pakistani government practiced extensively economic discrimination against East Pakistan. Despite generating 70% of Pakistan's export revenue with jute and tea, East Pakistan received much less government spending than West Pakistan. Economists in East Pakistan, including Rehman Soeben and Nurul Islam among others, demanded a separate foreign exchange account for the eastern wing. The economists paraphrased Pakistan's two-nation theory ideology against India, by pointing to the existence of two different economies within Pakistan itself, dubbed the two economies theory. The central government also refused to release foreign aid allocated for East Pakistan. The populist leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was arrested for treason in the Agartala conspiracy case and was released during the 1969 uprising in East Pakistan, which resulted in Ayub Khan's resignation. General Yahya Khan assumed power, reintroducing martial law. Ethnic and linguistic discrimination was common in Pakistan's civil and military services, in which Bengalis were underrepresented. Cultural discrimination also prevailed, making East Pakistan forge a distinct political identity. Authorities banned Bengali literature and music in state media. A cyclone devastated the coast of East Pakistan in 1970, killing an estimated 500,000 people, and the central government was criticized for its poor response. After the December 1970 elections, the Bengali nationalist Awami League won 167 of 169 East Pakistani seats in the National Assembly. The League claimed the right to form a government and develop a new constitution, but was strongly opposed by the Pakistani military and the Pakistan People's Party, led by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. War of Independence. Main article, Bangladesh Liberation War. See also, Bangladesh Genocide. In early 1971, negotiations began on the transfer of power. The Awami League wanted to develop a constitution based on its 6 points agenda. This was opposed by the Pakistani military, the Pakistan People's Party and the Muslim League factions. Talks eventually broke down as the junta led by Yahya Khan prepared for a military operation in East Pakistan. The Bengali population was angered when the newly elected National Assembly was not convened under pressure from the junta and West Pakistani politicians. Despite enjoying an absolute majority in the newly elected parliament, Prime Minister-elect Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was prevented from taking the oath. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto threatened to break the legs of West Pakistani MPs if they flew to Dhaka for the first session of parliament. Civil disobedience erupted across East Pakistan, with loud calls for independence. Mujib addressed a pro-independence rally of nearly 2 million people on the 7th of March, 1971, where he said, "This time the struggle is for our liberation. This time the struggle is for our independence." The flag of Bangladesh was raised for the first time on the 23rd of March, Pakistan's Republic Day. Around midnight on the 26th of March, 1971, military operations under the code name of Operation Searchlight began. The first targets were the student dormitories of Dhaka University, the police barracks in Dhaka's Rajabal locality, and Hindu neighborhoods in Old Dhaka. The Pakistan Army arrested Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and flew him to a jail in West Pakistan. The army burnt down the Ittifaq newspaper's office. Before his arrest, Mujib proclaimed the independence of Bangladesh. Pakistani forces launched a widespread campaign of killings, torture, rape, arson and destruction across East Pakistan, targeting segments of the population perceived to be pro-Awami League and pro-independence. The Hindu minority was distinctly targeted because of Pakistan's hostility with neighboring Hindu-majority India. During the Bangladesh Liberation War, the Mukti Bahini emerged as the Bengali resistance force. A highly successful guerrilla war was fought against Pakistan. Bengalis continued to defect from Pakistan's diplomatic service, military, police, and bureaucracy. In April, they helped Awami League leaders to set up the Provisional Government of Bangladesh, which operated in exile from Calcutta with the support of the Indian government until December 1971. The Bangladesh Armed Forces was formally established in November 1971, when Bengali forces secured control of much of the countryside. The Mukti Bahini forced the railway network to shut down to stop Pakistani troop movements. Some of the notable operations of the Mukti Bahini included Operation Jackpot and Operation Barisul. India intervened in the war on the 3rd of December 1971, after Pakistan's failed preemptive airstrikes on India's northwestern flank. with a joint ground advance by Bangladeshi and Indian forces, coupled with airstrikes by both India and the small Bangladeshi air contingent, the capital Dhaka was liberated from Pakistani occupation in mid-December. During the last phase of the war, both the Soviet Union and the United States dispatched naval forces to the Bay of Bengal in a Cold War standoff. The 9-month-long war ended with the surrender of the Pakistan Eastern Command to the Bangladesh India Allied Forces on the 16th of December, 1971. Under international pressure, Pakistan released Mujib from imprisonment on the 8th of January, 1972, and he was flown to a million-strong homecoming in Dhaka. Remaining Indian troops were withdrawn by the 12th of March, 1972. By August 1972, the new state was recognized by 86 countries. Pakistan recognized Bangladesh in 1974 after pressure from most of the Muslim countries. The government of Bangladesh records the official death toll of the war at 3 million, including victims of atrocities and those who died from starvation. Minimum estimates for the number of those killed range between 300,000 and 500,000. An estimated 10 million refugees fled to neighboring India and 30 million were internally displaced. The war was one of the first to record the use of rape as a weapon of war, with an estimated 200,000 women being subjected to sexual abuse by the Pakistani army. The war saw the systematic targeting of Bengali elites, particularly intellectuals. The Jamaat-e-Islami formed paramilitary militias, which aided Pakistani troops and guided them to their intended targets. While Bengali Muslims bore the brunt of atrocities because of racial tensions with the largely Punjabi Muslim West Pakistani forces, the minority Bengali Hindu community was singled out for attacks by the Pakistani armed forces, a legacy which has led Hindu nationalist groups to claim that the war was a Hindu genocide. Archer Blood, the U.S. Consul General in East Pakistan at the time of the war, described the situation as selective genocide. In 1974 and 2002, Pakistan formally expressed regret for what happened. In 2015, Pakistan denied any atrocities took place. In 2022, a bipartisan resolution was introduced in the U.S. Congress to recognize the Bangladesh genocide of 1971. The International Association of Genocide Scholars regards the atrocities as a genocide. Modern Bangladesh. First Parliamentary Era. The new government of Bangladesh transformed East Pakistan's state apparatus into an independent Bangladeshi state. The Awami League successfully reorganized the bureaucracy, framed a written constitution, and rehabilitated war victims. In January 1972, Mujib introduced a parliamentary republic through a presidential decree. On the 12th of January 1972, Mujib took oath and assumed office as Prime Minister of Bangladesh. The emerging state structure was heavily influenced by the British Westminster model. The Constitution Drafting Committee led by Kamal Hossain established a Bill of Rights influenced by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Constituent Assembly adopted the Constitution of Bangladesh on the 4th of November, 1972, establishing a secular, multi-party parliamentary democracy. Bangladesh joined the Commonwealth of Nations, the UN, the OIC, and the non-aligned movement. In his maiden speech to the Unga, Mujib stated that the Bengali has struggled for many centuries for the right to live a free and honorable life as independent citizens of an independent country. They expected to live in peace and harmony with all the nations in the world. He strengthened relations with India by signing a 25-year friendship treaty, a border demarcation agreement, and protocols on cross-border trade. The Land Boundary Treaty was aimed at resolving border disputes inherited from East Pakistan and swapping the Indo-Bangladesh enclaves. The land boundary agreement was challenged in court, which ruled that the government needed the prior approval of Parliament to implement the land boundary treaty. Mujib was a vocal supporter of Palestinian rights despite Israel being one of the first countries to recognize Bangladesh's independence. In what became Bangladesh's first dispatch of military aid overseas, Mujib sent an army medical unit to Egypt during the 1973 Arab-Israeli War. In economic policy, the first 5 years of Bangladesh was the only socialist period in its history. Mujib nationalized 580 industrial plants, as well as banks and insurance companies. In 1974, the government invited international oil companies to explore the Bay of Bengal for oil and natural gas. Petrobangla was established as the National Oil and Gas Corporation. The Mujib government faced huge economic problems exacerbated by the resettlement of millions of people displaced in 1971, a breakdown in the food supply chain, poor health services and a lack of other necessities. The effects of the 1970 cyclone were still being felt, and the economy needed reconstruction after the war. The Bangladesh famine of 1974 damaged Mujib's popularity. Mujib presided over a regime that was built around his personality cult. Sycophants and loyalists developed an ideology called Mujibism. Presidential era, 1975-1991. See also, military coups in Bangladesh. In January 1975, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman introduced one-party socialist rule under Baxil. Rahman banned all newspapers except for state-owned publications and amended the constitution to increase his power. He was assassinated during a coup on the 15th of August, 1975, and the presidency passed to the usurper Khandeka Mostaq Ahmed for 4 months. Ahmed is widely regarded as a traitor by Bangladeshis. Tajuddin Ahmed, the nation's first prime minister, and 4 other independence leaders were assassinated on the 4th of November, 1975. Chief Justice Abu Sadat Mohammed Sain was installed as president by the military on the 6th of November, 1975. Bangladesh was governed by a military junta led by the Chief Martial Law Administrator for 3 years. In 1977, the army chief Ziaur Rahman became president. Rahman reinstated multi-party politics, privatized industries and newspapers, reopened the Dhaka Stock Exchange, established BEPSA and held the country's second general election in 1979. In 1978, 200,000 Arakanese Muslim refugees crossed the Naf River into Bangladesh due to a Burmese military crackdown. The refugees were later repatriated. A semi-presidential system evolved, with the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP, governing until 1982. Rahman was assassinated in 1981 and was succeeded by Vice President Abdus Sattar. After a year in office, Sattar was overthrown in the 1982 Bangladesh coup d'état. Chief Justice F.M. Arzanuddin Chowdhury was installed as president, but Army Chief Hussain Muhammad Ershad became the country's de facto leader and assumed the presidency in 1983. Ershad lifted martial law in 1986. He governed with 4 successive prime ministers, Atur Rahman Khan, Mizanur Rahman Chowdhury, Maudud Ahmed and Kazib Safar Ahmed, and a parliament dominated by his JTO party. Ershad pursued administrative decentralization, dividing the country into 64 districts, and pushed parliament to make Islam the state religion in 1988. The first SAARC summit was held in Dhaka under Ershad in December 1985. Bangladesh dispatched its first contingent of UN peacekeepers in 1988. In 1990, Bangladesh joined the US-led coalition to liberate Kuwait during the Gulf War. A mass uprising forced Ershad to resign, and Chief Justice Shahabuddin Ahmed led the country's first caretaker government as part of the transition to parliamentary rule. Parliamentary era, 1991 present. After the 1991 general election, the 12th Amendment to the Constitution restored the parliamentary republic, and Begum Khaleda Zia became Bangladesh's first female prime minister. Zia, a former First Lady, led a BNP government from 1990 to 1996. In 1991, her finance minister, Saifur Rahman, began a major program to liberalize the Bangladeshi economy. In addition to setting up the Chittagong Stock Exchange, banking, pharmaceuticals, aviation, ceramics, steel, telecoms, and tertiary education were opened up for investments, resulting in increased market competition. In 1992, an estimated 250,000 refugees from Burma took shelter in Bangladesh due to the suppression of the Burmese pro-democracy movement. Most of these refugees returned to Burma by 1993. In 1994, Bangladesh provided the largest non-US contingent in Operation Uphold Democracy, a military intervention in Haiti. In 1996, a year of political upheaval saw a boycotted February election, an attempted military coup, and mediation efforts producing a caretaker government to oversee elections. For 3 months, Muhammad Habibur Rahman served as the interim leader of the country. The Awami League returned to power in the June election after 21 years. One of the first initiatives of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was to repeal the deeply controversial Indemnity Ordinance, which protected her father's killers from prosecution. Hasina also signed the Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord, which ended an insurgency in the southeastern hill districts. She reached an agreement with India for sharing the water of the Ganges. In 1997, Sheikh Hasina hosted South Africa's first post-apartheid President Nelson Mandela, PLO Chairman Yasser Arafat, and Turkish President Süleyman Demirel for the Silver Jubilee celebrations of Bangladesh's independence. The economic reform momentum lost steam due to political instability, including frequent hartals and strikes by the opposition. In 2001, the BNP returned to power on the back of promises to improve the economy. The second Zia administration saw higher economic growth, but security and political problems gripped the country between 2004 and 2006. A radical Islamist militant group, the JMB, carried out a series of terror attacks. At the end of the BNP's term in 2006, there was widespread political unrest. The Bangladeshi military urged President Iyadudin Ahmed to impose a state of emergency, and a caretaker government, led by Fakhruddin Ahmed, was installed from January 2007 to December 2008 to implement reforms to the electoral system, judiciary, and bureaucracy. The JMB leaders were arrested and later executed in March 2007. After achieving a landslide victory in the 2008 Bangladeshi general election, the Awami League government returned to power, taking their oath on the 6th of January 2009, with Sheikh Hasina once again becoming the prime minister and bringing political stability and economic growth to the nation. In 2010, the Supreme Court reduced the scope for military interventions through legal loopholes and reaffirmed secular principles in the Constitution. The Awami League set up a war crimes tribunal to prosecute surviving Bengali Islamist collaborators of the 1971 atrocities. Human rights abuses increased under Hasina and her administration, particularly enforced disappearances by the Rapid Action Battalion, with the government being described as increasingly authoritarian since returning to power in 2008. The 2014 elections and 2024 elections were boycotted by the BNP-Jamaat alliance. The BNP and Jamaat have often engaged in violent protests to overthrow the government. In 2017, Bangladesh experienced the largest influx of Arakanese refugees in its history. An estimated 700,000 Rohingya refugees took shelter in Cox's Bazar after a campaign of ethnic cleansing in Rakhine State, Myanmar. The national poverty rate went down from 80% in 1971 to 44.2% in 1991 to 12.9% in 2021. Bangladesh